You click on that video to see some force feedback settings, so settings is what you're gonna get.
You like a snake just spitting poison, poison.
Let's start with ACC and check the Moza, Simagic and Simucube 2 Pro. First thing I do for most of the sims is to turn off all the effects, as they introduce crazy noise and vibrations in those powerful DD wheelbases, and except of bringing unpleasant experience, they fight against the little details I want to feel from the force feedback itself. I will choose the gain depending on the car and the power of the base, and driving for fun will stay around 14-15 Nm peaks if possible, and for competitive racing I will do tons of practice with 8 maximum 10 Nm peaks. And there is a reason for that. To fight the force feedback for fun is really great experience, but driving competitively, I really need my body as relaxed as possible, and fighting huge peaks is not ideal. If I already polished my movements through tons of practicing, high peaks will bring unnecessary tension to my body and muscles, and that is not the ideal state for repetitive movements. Actually, I will share a video in the description below from Suelo Almeida, who explained really beautifully how important it is to have your body as relaxed as possible.
I just figured out my problem. And it's the same thing I tell you guys in the coaching sessions. It's the same thing that my coach told me in real life. I'm tensing up. My arms are getting rigid when I'm driving on the most dangerous bits and I don't feel the car. I just need to relax my hands more.
That being said, driving for fun and driving competitively for me are two completely different approaches. So let's start with the Moza settings I use for ACC. In the basic page, 900 degrees, road sensitivity maxed out 10 for the R21, but for the R5 I go down to 5, and for the R9 that is set to 7 to take that same level of smoothness like from the Big Brother. Game force 100, maximum wheel speed 100, wheel spring 0 and wheel damper 0. Now remember, having damper, springs, friction down to 0 can make the wheel really feel very light on the straights, but loading the tires in the corner, I can feel much more clean the force feedback. For me personally, corners are much more important, so that's my personal choice, particularly when I drive for the last tenth of the second with low force feedback. If you don't like that light feeling, you can put just little friction. In advanced settings I have the inertia up to 2250, and as I've said, wheel friction 0 for the reason I just explained, and the next two options are basically off. The force feedback equalizer and curves looks like fun option, but every time I tweak them it gets worse, so I'm sure you will find some good suggestions in the comment section. That being said, the only thing I changed between the R5, R9 and R21 is the road sensitivity slider, which I set 5 for the R5, 7 for the 9, and for the R21 I just go full. This base is absolutely nuts. Let's move to Simagic. Same logic applied to all different brands. Total force is maxed out at 100%. Smooth level for ACC, I can go down to 3 before start feeling too much noise in this sim. Wheel return speed 100, and mechanical spring, damper and friction and dynamic damper are down to 0. Again, remember, those settings make the wheel super light around the center, particularly on the straights, but that is my personal compromise because I want to take the maximum of the feedback while I'm loading the tires into the corner. This is just personal choice, and I'm all about performance, and realistic feeling is on the back. The interpolation is very interesting filter which supposed to upsample the low quality force feedback signal, but in general going up to 10 for example will make the wheel super smooth. I found I start losing the road texture, so for ACC I keep it at around 5, where the base is still smooth but can read the little details and texture of the road. If you don't like the wheel around the center and feels too light, you can add some friction, but remember that is artificial force which fight against the force feedback. So be careful and don't go, I believe, over 20%. Next one is Simucube. I haven't drove this base for a few months now, but I did for 3 consecutive years, so those are the settings I found work the best for me. If you just choose the suggested profile and take the iRacing one, is the one I love the most, and again I turned down the damping and friction and set the reconstruction filter to 5 in ACC to make the force feedback decently smooth, which in iRacing, for example, I used to 1 very fast. As you can see, my settings are not complex at all, and I'm all about performance. They have their advantages and disadvantages, and particularly around the center they feel very light, which is weird, but that allows me to feel a little bit more in the braking zones and, well, start loading the tires in the corners, so that is my personal compromise. Those exact settings on all the 3 bases works perfectly for Automobilista too, and I won't change anything, but I will turn off the game effects as they really make those daily bases unpleasant. iRacing, all 3 bases can get a bit more rough settings, so for Simagic I will put the smoothness filter 1 and the interpolation up to 7. It will be smooth enough for my personal like and fast in response as well. For the Moza I won't change anything as those settings are really fast and smooth enough for all 3 games. For Simucube and iRacing, the reconstruction filter definitely goes down to 1 very fast. All those settings are not smooth at all, but smoothness is not what I'm looking for. For me it's all about performance, and I want to feel a little bit more details and have fast responses. I really want to feel connected with the car. All 3 can be set to be beautifully smooth, and for example, if you turn the road effects on the Moza down to 1, the smoothness filter on Simagic up to 10, or reconstruction filter on Simucube to up to 8, they will be super smooth, but the little effects of the road will disappear. Those are the 3 filters you have to play the most and find that compromise between road effects and smoothness. That being said, here are a few things I believe you should really consider about force feedback. It will always be personal preference and we all need to find our sweet spot, but going high torques is not always good, and here is why. When we put tons of practice on certain track and at some point we hit our own limits, I'm sure you realize at that stage you don't react on force feedback feeling anymore, because you already know how the car reacts on every corner and every braking zone, and you already start setting your inputs before even the car reacts or the force feedback for that matter. When I'm at that stage and reach my own limits, the high torques just fight against me and add unnecessary tension on my body, which is not ideal at all. Don't get me wrong, I love high torques, and as you can see in most of my videos, I really use very high peaks because it's just fun. But if I want to stay consistent and hit like 5 consecutive whops around Nordschleife within half-second gap, I really need my body in full relax mode to repeat my movements. So those are my personal settings and reasons, but if you don't like them, that's perfectly fine. Just keep looking for your personal best, and I guess I will see you in the next one.